This conference will now be recorded.
And I think the good morning, good afternoon to all the other people logging in from the other parts of the world. Welcome to the session 11 of AACE India Section webinar series. Just a bit of disclaimer, being a commercial person, we have tried to tailor this program to suit more of the young professionals who are just beginning their careers. So it's a very vast subject, so both procurement as well as contract management, and 1 hour is very insufficient to cover the entire gamut of the program. So it's primarily focused on the basic aspects of the procurement planning as well as contract management, and this is primarily targeted to the young professionals. So that's been my disclaimer. Yeah, hi, welcome again, and let me go forward. Yeah, I am Ramapriya. So I am freelance currently as a freelance contracts and cost professional. I recently worked as a consultant, various entities, so supporting the procurement as well as the contracts aspects. So I'm a certified cost professional from AACI. I've been a member since 2003 with AACI and closely observing how ACE has developed its courses and things like that. And I had been very interested to be certified as a CCP. So I got certified in 2008. Primarily, I'm a civil engineer, graduate in civil engineer, and a post-graduation in construction management from ICMAR. So I have a total of 17 years. I've worked with the project owner organizations, consultant, as well as a contractor like Bechtel. So during which stage, I've been exposed to a lot of different aspects on contracts as well as procurement, and also as well as I managed managed a team of cost engineers in various capacities. So that's been my background. So currently, I'm also in terms of ACE contribution. I'm also supporting ACE India Section in its various efforts. I'm also volunteering with ACE International, so as a certification grader. So interest. So I enjoy reading. Also, I'm quite passionate about coaching and of course gaming. So very briefly about myself. Okay. So today, what we'll focus upon is a few things. So very basically, procurement and planning. So basic requirements of contract. So how contracts becomes effective. Very basic things. So types of contracts, we'll just touch upon that. How it is employed in capital projects. Various delivery methods. So how are parties contracted to each other? Various clauses. A few top clauses normally which is appearing in contract documents. So terminologies, some terminologies I'll take you through, as well as some alternate terminologies which is used in the industry. So this is our primary focus for today. So coming to the topic, procurement and contracts, as I said, it's a complete, it's an entire aspect in itself, that right from the project inception to the closure till the facility is operational, the commercial professionals like procurement as well as contract professionals are involved, right? Till they are probably one of the first teams to come on board as well as the last team to leave behind. So, that's the range of work that is involved in this aspect of project management. Okay, so just to be very brief definition, so the purchasing of goods, procurement focuses on the purchasing of goods and services for executing the work on the project, and various, it can involve materials to be incorporated in the constructed facility. So buying of specialized equipment to be operational. So it could be depending on the entity who is procuring, the procurement of equipment, machinery, construction machinery may have to be procured, like primarily by contractors to execute the work, as well as from a client's point of view, or even the main contractor point of view, technical services will be required, and normal trade services like labor contracts and things like that. So that's the wide variety of buying that happens on a project. So from a contract management, it all starts even from the beginning as well as even after the executing the award or the executing the contract. So entire the project has to be monitored for the execution. So the contracts managers, the contracts professional come into the picture to monitor the commercial aspects, compliance with regard to scope, quality, cost. So entire area of work falls into the contracts management aspect. So moving forward, so we have the TCM control cycle, which has been discussed in our previous session. So during the introduction as well as the TCM framework, which has been discussed. So very briefly, so we have, as per the TCM cycle, we have 4 steps, mainly plan, do, check, and act. So this forms the PDCA cycle. So just briefly, planning activities, performing, evaluating as well as measuring. So this forms the PDCA cycle. Now, how does our commercial process, fit into this? So let's have a look at it. So if I have to, frame the commercial aspect into this cycle, so we can say I can clearly divide it into pre-award and post-award activities. So where very broadly, pre-qualification and selection forms the pre-award part, and performance and assessment performs the post-award part. So if we have each of these aspects, they themselves, they can have their own PDCA cycles. So because these are really large aspects, which I have very crisply summarized into one slide. So pre-qualification involves in terms of actual selection of any contracting entity from a project owner side. So or if for a contractor has to subcontract some of the works, they may have to require to do a pre-qualification for any specialized services. So which involves in terms of sourcing of agencies, first of all trying to shortlist some of the entities who are capable of doing a particular, executing a particular project. That is what pre-qualification involves. So then selection is all the tender process is what I'm trying to say. So selection is, when we have a tender, pre-qualifications can start even before the tender is, can start parallelly as the design is going forward. So but selection is, you can do in the tender process or the bid process. Selection is what we do, that is awarding of the contract. So the entire bid process between pre-qualification and selection, that entire bid process happens. So from the selection, if you move forward to the performance part, that is the contracts management part, contracts administration part, where the contractor is on board and the execution is happening, and during which stage the contracts activities, the contracts management activities start. So that's during the execution, and then finally the assessment during the closure to check how the contractor has been performed. And you can see in my presentation, there are 2 dotted lines linking into pre-qualification and selection. Essentially what it means to say is, when we assess, so whether a party or a contractor has done a job in the way that has been expected, anticipated as per the contract. So that is an assessment that the project owner has to do or the employer has to do, and then may consider for the next job, for example another project, whether they're they meet the requirements or not. So that's where these arrows indicate.
Hello.
Whether, yeah. Hello. Yeah. Can people mute their phones? If there's any question, we can take it at the end. Okay. Thank you. So so assessment means whether they don't have to go through pre-qualification process once again if a contractor is found eligible or has developed a good rapport and reputation relationship with the contractor. So then they'll go to directly the selection process for the next project. So that's what it means to say. Can everyone mute the phone, please? Okay. So so that is a very brief linkage of our commercial process. Now, coming to basic definition, so procurement is the process by which goods or services are evaluated, as I said, and purchased for the project. So evaluation takes place before the actual purchase. So there could be a lot of entities with whom we can have an arrangement of contracting. So we tend to have those list of vendors, and then we negotiate. So and we evaluate their proposals, and then we agree, and then only the purchasing starts. So 4 steps. So planning to purchase, seeking the proposals, negotiation, arriving at the agreement and order placements. These are the four major stages in the procurement. So coming to the next level of detail. So we have, from a process point of view, this is very basically put. So process procurement request, expression of interest or RFP. So many project owners, in order to be fair, so you can float an expression of interest in the market and try and get the vendors to approach you in terms of participating in the RFP process. Now RFP, just to expand, EOI is expression of interest, RFP is request for proposal or your tender document. Okay, then from there once the client has a list and their capability profiles and things like that, so shortlisting of vendors will be happening. The employer would shortlist the vendors, and then once it is shortlisted, the tender or the RFP will be floated. So during the issue, there are several other phases here. So like, there could be a pre-bid meeting, there could be a site meeting, site visits and things like that. A few other processes. If there are some changes here in terms of when we do a bid process, if there are some amendments to the design or in terms of the document that we have put as a part of RFP, there could be an addendum process. So so these are some of the things that are part of this. Then once we receive the bids, there's technical and financial bid evaluation. Again, this can happen in two stages. So a technical bid can be evaluated first and then only considered for commercial evaluation. So then after that, the negotiation with the pre-selected vendors. So during technical and financial bid evaluation and the negotiation, there could be few parties which are not who have not understood the scope, are not able to, are not in a position to execute the work, may be eliminated during these stages in order to do the negotiation, and then we come to the award of work. In order to put it in a further breakup of the process map, so we have here pre-qualification. So we seek the interest of participation. So compiling and floating the RFP. So RFP will have several documents within itself: scope of work, technical spec, your conditions, general special conditions, other reports, your geotech report if it is necessary, or any other consultant report, or any other permits, licenses. All these would form part of RFP, which we are providing, and various forms that we are providing to the bidders in order to for them to submit their schedule, or maybe project schedule, what is their proposed schedule, maybe their list of personnel, their resources, list of resources, whether they are in terms of, this is all to evaluate their evaluate them technically. So during floating of RFP, parallelly a bid evaluation plan is developed. So a technical evaluation plan and a commercial evaluation plans are prepared separately by the technical teams and the commercial team. Then bids are received, then bid confirmation. So now there's a decision that the client takes whether bids conform to the requirements primarily. So I have shown it in two stages, technical and commercial. So depending on the size of the work, so this could be a combined decision whether the submitted bids are complying with both technical as well as commercial requirements. So I have assumed a two-stage process. So if in terms of we are doing a two-stage process, then if many times it happens that when the bids don't conform to technical requirements, they are disqualified, and only after confirming with the requirements, the scope requirements and the technical requirements, it proceeds towards the commercial evaluation. Then, as I said, negotiation. Then a note is made when once the negotiation is finalized. I mean, is done with all the preferred bidders or the shortlisted vendors. Then, depending on the most suitable contractor or the bidder, so an internal note is made, and as the work is then awarded based on the management approval, the work is awarded. The contract is placed. So very briefly, this is, I've just taken you through very quickly in terms of what's the procurement process. Okay, so just to take some example very briefly in terms of timeline. Now, what I have not showed in my previous slides is the timelines. So how much time would take for this procurement process? Now that depends on what we are procuring, what service we are trying to procure, or what material we are trying to procure. how complex it is. So it depends on a lot of things. So just FIDIC is very based on the FIDIC, just to be very indicative, they have proposed a tender period of 28 days. Now, from the start, from issue of the bids till the award period, they have proposed as 28 days. But this is very generic. This is just to indicate that FIDIC provides some benchmark or baselines primarily. So, but this changes from work to work package to work package, or the complexity of the work. Something could take even 3 months to 6 months, depending on how many changes are happening from the end user perspective. So there could be a lot of inputs that keep coming from the technical team, the design teams, from the operation teams, and things like that. So it all depends on how quickly the project owner is keen to do the thing. They want to probably fine tune more and more, to come at a very accurate, tender. So many that could go through many iterations. So it all depends. So, but on an average, somewhere around 30 to 45 days on generally. So as a thumb rule, so any package could be procured. So some of the small packages can be procured even faster. It could be 15 days, which is quite simple, or a single line item or something of that sort. So, but it all depends on the requirement of the project owner. So as I said, it's a typical sequence of the principal events. So issue of tender, you see submission of the tender and letter of acceptance and things like that. So coming to post award, so post award is just very briefly. This is completely dependent on the operation date of the project owner, or in terms of if we take some sort of retail store, or store opening dates, or in terms of operations, anything for that matter, factory operations. So it all depends on the time of completion. 8.2 which shows. So exact dates cannot be indicated here. It all depends on. But however, some indicative dates have been proposed by FIDIC. So right from commencement date. So notifications, defects notification period is normally 12 months from the date of taking over. So once the physical completion is done, the project is physically complete, the owner issues a taking over certificate. From there, in general, it will be defect notification period will be 12 months, but it can vary. So there will be there could be something, for example, some intricate packages, or there could be something like a latent defects, so which may require more time. For example, there could be from anywhere between 2 years to 5 years also. The contractor may be bound to remedy the latent defects or the underlying defects within a particular constructed aspect. So this all depends on the thing. But right now, what has been indicated is, what has been shown is just an indicator. So moving forward. So during procurement, now if I have to say, normally while procuring for a project with different packages, which has already been based on the work breakdown structure, various packages have been decided by the project team, and the tender operations are supposed to commence. So before the commencement, so we develop something called as a tender event schedule. This is nothing but a schedule for the procurement team, just like how schedule is being followed by the planning team. So based on that work breakdown structure, or our packaging, work packaging. So a schedule based on the steps that I have already highlighted. So plan is developed by the procurement team, and will be tracked on actual. So in terms of, as I said, if I total to procure a package, the total steps will take about 45 days. So date is put on each step of it. Like when a pre-qualification report will have to go, for example, if there are multiple teams, like a consultant is doing this work, and that has to go to has to be approved by the owner, for example, or the project owner. And then from there, how much time will it take for that approval to come? Then RFP, when it will be issued, when we have to get back the tenders. So when, if there are any pre-bid meetings, for example, this is just indicative. This particular this thing does not show the entire completion, because if I try to show a table here with the full this thing, the fonts will be very small. So it's just an indicative, the indicative presentation. I'm sorry. So, so this is planned on top of this. The first line will be planned, second line will be actual. So it can have various details. It can have comments towards the end, what is delayed and things like that. So this is just an indicative plan. So another aspect is probably everyone must have heard about something called as Incoterms actually. So Incoterms are international commercial terms. So what it means is when this primarily will be applicable when something needs to be imported. It's also called as, in procurement terminology, it's also called as long lead items. Okay, they may be long lead or short lead, but generally for long lead items or which has to travel on the through the sea or through the air from one place of the manufacture or to the place where it is actually installed. So when there is an agreement between parties for an international import, in such cases, something called as Incoterms can also come into play. So these are primarily used for capitalized equipments. For example, high-end equipments, which something like you can have vertical, horizontal transportation. It could be like you're importing lifts. You could be importing your escalators. You could be importing your chillers, for example. The high-end equipments. It could be some sort of your generation. Since most of it, at least in India's from an Indian point of view, most of it is nowadays many indigenous players are there. So many of it is when something has to be imported, so these various Incoterms can come into the picture. So if there are various modes of engagement here, so for example, if you see there are about 11 modes, I think. So X works. So right at by where there is a risk element that has been highlighted, who bears the risk and what is this all about. So this is actually available on the internet, so you can just do a little bit of research on this and get an idea. So free carrier place, and some of the common Incoterms are CIF, DAP, DDP. These are some of the common modes of engagement in terms of buying. So here again, the owner or so the terminologies change a little bit here. Buyer will become the project owner or buyer who is actually utilizing, and the seller probably will be the contracted entity. So who will be selling the product or something. So in essence, it is a purchase item that will be bought over in this case. So as you can see, the various risks are there. So where the seller takes over, like if you see X works, the risks are all on the buyer primarily, and the seller has very minimal risk. And if you look at the last part, the DDP, that is the delivered duty paid. So it is all the seller that takes the risk, and the buyer has very minimal risk. That means to say that the buyer has the seller has costed everything into his tender, so that the buyer is very clear of what exactly he is spending. So that means to say that the risk is all transferred onto the seller for a particular cost. Okay. So various things like packaging, loading charges, delivery, various cost aspects that come into the picture here. You can look at it. So where the origin terminal charges, loading. So then it has to. So various modes of transportation can also be involved here, right from the place of manufacture till the place it is actually delivered or installed. So various modes of transport like shipment and transport on road, air. So all this could come into the picture. So some terminologies very quickly. So quantity takeoff, you're already aware because our estimation and costing class has already happened previously on the India webinar series. So estimate, you're aware what it is. Pricing, depending on who is actually doing the costing, pricing or costing can be alternate. An addendum is, as I have explained, an additional information or something that can be added to the tender. Alternate bids, so a client has a particular scope in mind, capacities in mind, so they could when the bidder submits his bid, he could submit an alternate bid also apart from what client is asking. It could have a better value engineering aspect to it, so such bids are called as alternate bids. Bid documents, so whatever forms part of bid documents like a scoping document, conditions, technical spec, codes, any form of client reports or consultant reports and things like that. Change order. So change order is normally post contract, but change order formats would be provided in the bid. Contract document, which encompasses the entire thing. So technical bid, as I said, only the technical portion of the bid submitted by the vendor. Commercial bid is all about costing and other commercial implications, such as guarantees, payment securities, and other things. Price escalation. So when there is an aspect of uncertainty with regard to a particular item having an impact of cost, that it may change at some point of time during the execution of the project, price escalation comes into the picture. General conditions and special conditions. Now, depending on the type of form of contract that is used, general and special conditions, the overall terms and conditions of the project may be split into general and special conditions. Scope is the general scoping document. So this is some very common terminologies that procurement professionals come across. So coming to terminologies again, since the profession is such that in the industry there are a lot of common terminologies or parallel terminologies that are used, but these mean the same thing. So that's what I'm trying to indicate here. So if you say contract authorization, service request, and intent, this starts the process of procurement. So different companies or different industries can have different terminologies, but it means the same thing. Okay, expression of interest and interest of participation, these also same. So it is as I've explained, this is to seek the interest from the bidder to participate in the tender. Two-stage bidding or split procurement. As I've said, two-stage technical bid, commercial bid. So that's what I'm trying to explain here. Bid documents, RFP, tender documents. So you are able to understand that. Bid bond, tender security, or earnest money deposit. This is normally in government tenders or in high risk tenders. Normally tender security is it will be included in the tender package or the tender documents, where the contractor is expected or the bidder is expected to provide some sort of financial security to the project owner in order to be serious about participating in the tender. So that's what it means to say. Proposal, offer, bid, tender. So these are all alternate terms. So contractor's proposal is as bid, or offer is also, it means to say the bid, tender is also bid. So these are parallel terminology. And comparative statement, bid evaluation matrix. So comparative statement can be both technical comparative statement as well as commercial comparative. So bid evaluation matrix is also same. Tender note, award recommendation, notice of award, notice to proceed. So this comes after the finalization of the preferred bidder as a contractor. And then we have contract and agreement. Okay, so what's the requirement of contracts? Now, why do we need to have contracts? So very basically a few full points. So reducing risk. Now it's a method of distributing the risk between the project owner and the contractor or the parties to the contract. Maximize the cost savings. Now, if each party know what it's going to cost, they can as a benchmark, then they can start working on how they can save the cost. Minimize commercial claims. So any conflict which will result in terms of commercial damage to any of the party. So the contract, a written contract with all the terms and conditions clearly specified, will help in terms of minimizing commercial claims. Improving economic return. So as I said, minimize cost savings on economic return. So in terms of if an agreed schedule is there, and if the contract also addresses in terms of how this schedule can be further compressed or can be achieved earlier, so economic returns can be thought of. So some pitfalls or some key contract risks that should be thought of is tough and fair contract documents. So contract conditions can be tough, but it can also be fair. So in a sense, in terms of it could be the level of quality to be achieved or the timelines to be met. So there could be tough milestones and things like that. But it could also be fair in terms of the capability of the contractor or the capability of the client, the project owner to manage the situation. Aggressive negotiation practices. Now, this we have to be careful in terms of a judicial call has to be taken by the project owner how to negotiate, or I mean both the parties for that matter. To the give and take of the aspect of arriving at the agreement. So it could be aggressive. Outstanding communication skills. Now this forms one of the very important aspect in terms of contract management, because now contract is an agreement between parties and the communication has to be clear. Each party should understand exactly what the other party has thought of or has understood with regard to executing the particular work. So that's what very key basic requirements of why we need to have a contract. So what is a contract? So we have it's a legally enforceable promise. So when A submits a business proposal to B and B accepts the proposal. So that's what it means. So why that promise? So for its promise? For consideration. That is something in return for the promise will be normally it is the financial aspect. So money. Agreement, promise forming a consideration for each other is an agreement. So the basic tenet of the contract is there has to be a consideration. So only then it is enforceable under the law. Validity. So here it could be different form of. In India, it is an Indian Contract Act 1872. So in US, it could be Uniform Commercial Code. Or various other countries may have their own acts in terms of Contract Act. So in case of Indian Contract Act, it regulates transaction between the parties of an agreement. So it's only valid, as I said, between two competent authorities. What it means to say is each party should be capable of going, in terms of binding themselves to the obligations within the contract or the whatever provisions of the contract that they are getting into. So they have to be competent, whether it's financial competency or technical competency or any other aspect. So ethical competencies. So these are something that they have to take care. So lawful contract is always bound by the law. So law of the land has free consent of the parties, so it should not be coercive. So when one party is being coerced into getting into a contract, that is not enforceable under the law, which will come a little later. So not declared void. The law defines what is a voidful contract. Now, since we are saying it's lawful, so any unlawful activities two parties are having, so those will be declared void. Or there could be other aspects such as that violates having some sort of agreement or understanding violates the law of the land. So any of those provisions can be declared, because of which if a contract is agreed between parties, they can be declared as void. So contracting generally, what it includes. So contract conditions, so commercial terms and pricing. As I said, consideration is a key part. Scope of work. So all other technical deliverables, project execution, EHS, bonds and security, change management, and permits and licenses. Okay, moving to the, as I said, the enforceability and unenforceability aspects. So enforceable, when the contract is enforceable. So when even if, so for example, a contract has been agreed between parties. So, but the parties recognize that there are mistakes due to some value of the pricing, or quality, or in terms of the value of the work or the scope, some sort of discrepancy is existing in the contract. So, but it will still be enforceable. So it can be managed. So by agreement between the parties through an amendment, etc. Mistakes due to terms of contract, again, as I said, amendment. So an amendment can rectify the mistakes which has existed in a existing contract or an agreed contract. When they become unenforceable, so when the mistake of transaction, when parties agree to construct facility not zoned for the purpose, for example, the local municipality has demarked an area for a particular school and a hospital is being agreed to be, parties agree to build a hospital, for example. I mean, normally it doesn't happen, but just as an example. So in such cases, it will become contract will become unenforceable. Mistaken identity. Now, parties should not be mistaken for their own identity. So the entity names, for example, if it is wrongly written in the contract, then it becomes void. Mistake due to identity of the subject matter. Now, as I said, the documents are specifying some of the project or location or the project address or something is wrong. Then in such cases it could become a subject matter issue and it could be void. So existence of the subject matter, for example, this could be due to some sort of force majeure or act of God or something like that. The place, for example, where the project is supposed to come up, the site probably is impacted in terms of flooding or earthquake or any other, because there's some reason where the contract cannot be executed. In such cases, it becomes unenforceable. So which are the areas that the contract management influences in our project control plan, for example? So if we see project scope, execution strategy will be covered in the contract normally. So the WBS helps in terms of all these aspects. So schedule, cost estimating, budgeting, resource planning. So planning all this procurement, when equipment have to be delivered or when it has to be delivered at site or installed at site, and these are the schedule aspects of it. And then we have the risk management. Contract is nothing but an instrument or a tool to manage the risk between parties. So risk management obviously comes into it. Value analysis and engineering, when something can be improved in terms of time, quality, or cost. So value engineering comes into the picture. Change management is a very essential part of the modern day contracts. So that it makes it flexible in terms of executing the contract successfully. So forecasting covers with the contractors' reports and things like that. And then, of course, the invoicing and payment part is all covered in our project cost accounting and progress and performance measurement. So this all this gamut are covered, agreed between parties. So in a contract. Now, traits of any good contracting entity. This doesn't segregate between the project owner or the contracted entity. So some of the key traits are: the entity should be well financed, so to execute the work, organized, so and then well equipped, having relevant licenses to execute the work. So a registered body will help, and has qualified personnel and has good experience. So now some of these traits are also utilized when we do our pre-qualifications. These are the primary traits that we use to shortlist the vendors for including them in a tender process. So some of the forms that we provide to the bidders or prospective bidders will include all these aspects in order for the project owner to evaluate their capability to execute the work. Okay, coming to some contract terminologies generally. So audit is the owner's right to audit contractors' facilities or contractors' execution plan and things like that. Changes, variations, as already has been explained. Contractor responsibilities. So what are the various responsibility of the contractor in terms of execution, safety, quality, and the monitoring of their subcontractors and things like that. Sorry. Delays, differing site conditions. So in terms of having some sort of sense, a site in terms of any site, there could be some latent defects or latent issues in the underlying surface, subsurface conditions and things like that. So how these are addressed. So what's the contractor's entitlement when the site conditions are differing. So all these things are indicated in this clause, or normally this what it means. Dispute resolution, when there is a dispute which cannot be when the parties are not in a position to reconcile. So what are the remedies to resolve this dispute? Force majeure. So as I said, something that is beyond the control of the parties to the contract, before force majeure comes into the play. Governing law, so the law of the land. So reference to law of the land, or in case of there could be also provisions with regard to which courts decide what laws to be followed. Indemnification. So parties indemnify each other against loss or this thing. So that's called indemnification. Insurance provisions, various insurance that the parties have to take, so to protect their own investment. So late completion damages, or also called as delay damages. Limitation of liability, again, what is the so what is the liability of each party and where it is limited. Order of precedence is which section of the contract takes precedence over the other. Owner responsibilities. So what are the owner responsibilities? So we saw contractors responsibilities. So similarly, there can be owner responsibilities. Payments and compensation, variations. So schedule, execution schedules. Suspension, when the project has to be briefly suspended due to various reasons, like as I said, force majeure or any other sort of reason, or non-compliance and things like that. Termination, when the parties agree that they want to terminate, or it depends on options of termination that can be included in the contract. So time is the essence. So primarily, this is the essence of the contract. Contract is bound by time to be executed within a particular time. So it can't be infinite. So that's what is called as time is the essence. And then warranty provisions. So post installation, or in terms of the guarantees, written guarantees that's provided by the executed party, so to the project owner, in terms of the installed equipments or any other facilities that has been constructed. So these are some of the common terminologies that we find in contracts. So parallel terminologies, again, as we noticed in during the procurement stage, some parallel terminologies. So include owner, employer, or client. It depends. It's a definition that probably it's dependent on the contracting parties, or the how they want to be defined. So order of precedence, priority of documents. So order of precedence is also can be stated as priority of contract documents. So executed contract and agreement, executed agreement. Good for construction, issued for construction. This is more of a technical part. Changes, also variations. Claims or unsolicited proposals. So unsolicited proposals or claims. So when other party is not seeking a proposal and the proposal has been submitted, it's an unsolicited proposal. Force majeure, act of God. Now force majeure encompasses act of God as well as the other part. So alternate dispute resolution or dispute adjudication. Defects or deficiencies. So in the executed product. Defects notification period, defects liability period. Defects notification period, what we notice in FIDIC, and defects liability. Many American contracts specify this as defect liability, American terminology. Virtual completion, substantial completion, price variation, price escalation. So these are some of the alternate terminologies that are used. So using terms consistently. So when you write contracts, you have to creating a binding agreement under law. Legal writing is not creative writing. So we cannot use different terms in the same contract. Royalty in one paragraph, license fee in one, and user fee in the third paragraph. So we have to pick one term and state that consistently in the contract. So this comes to the language of writing contracts primarily. So if we are writing contracts, or in terms of any aspect within or any section within the contract, then we have to be careful in the usage of terminology. Types of contracts, so methods of contract vary with industry and practices, and within the construction industry, contracting entities, methods, and strategy vary widely. Now, all of you are aware of this. All are professionals, so if you worked into or more different places, this is common. So very quickly going through so contracts are classified in different ways. So based on the nature of work, we can have construction contract, technical services contract for appointing consultants, specialized consultants, general services such as cleaning, maintenance, etc. Supply of capitalized equipment, as I said, we use Incoterms. So supply of goods, so this is materials primarily to be incorporated, and supply of labor, and rental services. For example, some equipment are being rented, taken on rent for execution of work. So this is a classification based on nature of work. Nature of pricing, so fixed price, cost reimbursable, target contracts. Within the fixed price contract, these are only some of the very key arrangements between the parties. So fixed price has a unit price and lump sum. Within lump sum, there can be with adjustment and with incentives. Now, coming to our delivery methods, this is based on the traditional deliveries. We have design, bid, build, EPC, task order type of contracts. So single prime contractor, multiple prime contractor, design, build operations, agency, construction management, construction at risk organization. So design, bid and build, where the design aspect is taken mostly by the project owner. So he could have an arrangement where the design is taken care, and then then the bidding process happens, and then the build aspect is covered by the contractor. So EPC has both the design and build by one entity, by one of the contractors. So engineering, procurement, and construction. Task order is one umbrella agreement, normally used for smaller things like such as maintenance, as I said. So one umbrella under one umbrella agreement, task orders, repeated task orders are being issued to the contractor. So single prime contractor, one main contractor who hires all the subcontractor design entities. So design entities, etc. So multiple prime contractor in case of large scale projects where the package size, like package contractor has been is being executed. For example, if you take, for example, a new airport has to be constructed. The terminal building could be one project, a runway could be another project. Construction of aprons, taxiways could form one more package, different package, fuel pipeline, for example. These could be different packages under major contractors. So multiple prime contractor mode can be adopted. So agency construction management, where a specialized agency looks after the construction management aspect of it. Construction at risk organization. So a more newer form of contracting is alliance form of contracting. So where the project owner and the contractor or consultant come together as a hybrid organization. So this develops a little bit of trust and working together, more of a collaboration rather than a competition. The traditional form of contractor have competitive deficiencies in terms of the project owner and the contractor could be maybe competing in terms of who's better. So this form of the newer form of alliance contracting will amalgamate the teams and then try to execute as one team. So very quickly, I think the pluses and minuses of each type of contract. So in this case, the lump sum scope is well defined, drawing specs are ready. So the pluses are easy to administer, so maximum construction efficiency, low risk for the employer as most of the risks are borne by the contractor. So when it comes to minuses, potential for claims when drawing spec changes. Now it becomes cumbersome to manage the change in this type of contract. That is the key drawback of this type of contract. So and it may cost very high. So because of the change, so the risk and cost will be high. Unit price, so each specific line item, pay items are identified and cataloged, quantified and everything. So the idea is, the advantages will be low risk for claims. In terms of claims can be managed. So flexibility, as I said, variations and claims can be managed. Procurement can be faster. So when packages are split into sub packages and things like that, when work is split into sub packages, work breakdown is there. So procurement can be faster and flexibility in terms of conditions. So in terms of risk, the responsibility, so risk for most of the risk with the employer, because the employer has to have additional personnel in order to monitor this, to administer this type of contract. So, and in case of when it comes to bidding, probably when somebody is quoting low or something like that, and they are confidently saying that during negotiation that they have relooked at the tender and it is all in line. So that those kind of biased bidding cannot be avoided by the client unless they have the specialized teams to evaluate this properly and then do the awarding process. Cost reimbursable, so scope of work is not well defined. So engineering, drawing engineering not ready based on actual cost plus percentage. So advantages, contract can be made in the early stages. So the contractor can be brought on board very quickly, flexibility to changes in the scope. So since the scope is not yet defined, so it can keep getting added to the open book estimates. So fixed price contingencies are eliminated. So there is very less incentive for the contractor to control the cost. Now contractor could have certain other subcontractors, and if the contract flows down such a way that the contractor himself may not be able to control the cost properly. So risk, a lot of risk. So that will be actually flow down, and then when it flows up to the employer, so that risk will have to be taken by the employer. So heavy administration costs, as I said, the project will be. So target price, so let's look at target price. Sufficient design is completed, definitive estimate and project schedule is agreed as a target. So everything is ready, estimate, schedule as well as scope, design, everything is already there, and it just needs to be agreed with the contractor. So contractor knows exactly what he's bidding for, and the project owner also knows exactly what is expected. So encouraging speedy completion is one of the prime focus in this type of contract arrangement. So contractor is rewarded for superior performance. So there could be some sort of bonus clauses and things like that, flexibility in controlling the work. So work is entirely taken by the contractor, and he knows he has a target date. There's no compromise on that. So disadvantages, so no opportunity for competitively bid. No, in order to this will require a lot of specialized things from both competency is required from both employer side as well as the contractor side. So very difficult to find. This will take a lot of iterative process in order to arrive at this, because generally the trust has to be built in executing this type of contract. Variations can be expensive, so because of the fixed timeline, the cost may not have cannot be renegotiated. If there are variations, then probably the owner has to stick to the cost quoted by the contractor. So from a risk allocation point of view, based on scope definition, the vagary and as well as the well-defined part of it. So different contract types have been defined. Now this is based on our SK6. Most of this content is all taken from our skills and knowledge 6. So from our AACE knowledge book. So cost reimbursable can be vague as well as, whereas fixed price contract can be well defined. So these are the various things. So similarly, contractor risk, employer risk. So can be the fixed price lump sum contractor can have high risk, and fixed price unit cost the employer will have the best option. So some key clauses. So authorized representative, as I've already discussed earlier, order of precedence, site condition, differing site conditions, variations, indemnity, excusable delays, force majeure, owner furnished utilities and facilities. Now what, for example, owner may be providing water, electricity, and any other type of same facilities in terms of putting for the contractor to set up his labor camp or labs and things like that. So contractor furnished drawings, data samples, how this will be reviewed, and what are the deliverables. Commencement and progress is more to do with the timeline of the contract. Performance and payment securities. So as I said, contract schedule, measurement for payment and invoicing. What are the, whether it will be milestone measurement or whether based on the remeasurable work. So these are some of the things that will be discussed. Pricing adjustments, if any. So as I said, price escalation requirement. If basic material price is increasing, it could be cement, sand, bitumen, any of these. So in such cases, if both parties are anticipating, such a price adjustment clauses can be included. Tax, again are governed by the law of the land. Liquidated damages, so what the contractor has to pay in terms of delay or any other lacunae or deficiencies in executing the contract. Suspension, termination, and arbitration I have discussed. So some source references that I have, I'm referring to our skills and knowledge, some of the recommended practices that we have, total cost management, and some professional practice guides, such as developed by GIMSAC. So thank you. This is the end of my introduction to the project procurement planning as well as contract management. Any questions? Anything? Or is it
Hi.
fine?
Hello.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi, Rambia. I have one question. Like in Middle East, especially, FEDIC Red Book is basically for the remeasurable contract.
Yeah.
But in Middle East, most of the contracts is the contractual terms is modifying from the FEDIC, and it is keeping as a lump sum contract.
Okay.
So from contractor point of view, what is your opinion for this kind of contracts, which especially in the Middle East they are following?
So
And most of the terms and condition is favorable to the employer.
So that this normally will have to be discussed during the bid negotiation stage. So what happens is FEDIC now provides general conditions, mainly general conditions, and the client chooses to customize the special conditions, and some of the clauses may be overwritten, or some of the clauses can be new clauses could be included. So this happens actually. So what happens is during the bidding stage, the contractor will have to thoroughly, review the conditions or the documents that have been provided by the client, and then have to negotiate on that. So that could be the only time when this risk can be mitigated from the contractor side of contractor point of view.
I'll see. For example, only one or two examples I will tell you.
Yeah.
In appendix to contract, there is a clause for professional indemnity where they are mentioning one particular amount for one occurrence, and the number of occurrences is unlimited.
Okay.
So the liability of cost, how much it will come, is not fixed on the contractor.
Okay.
You understand my question, right?
I understood that. So that is when, as I said, so in terms of when the bidding process is happening, so that is when probably the contractors bring up these kind of questions during pre-bid meetings or during negotiation meetings, that number of occurrences has to be fixed. So if a document has been taken from the client and has not been evaluated by the contractor, then the contractor is taking the risk upon themselves in such.
No, here the question is because no contractor is not taking seriously. Why? Because this kind of occurrences is generally not coming. It is very rare.
Yeah, correct. Indemnity.
Yeah, indemnity kind of things is not coming, and it is
so
not
professional indemnity when it comes to your if I say measurable contract, your professional indemnity will be in terms of your supervision or any sort of course, I don't know whether there are EHS penalties. Some contracts will propose EHS penalties, so for violation in terms of any environment, health, safety aspects. So for each occurrence, so in a remeasurable contract, it will be primarily for your execution or the quality of execution, or it could be those aspects. It cannot be on the design aspect.
No, I'm telling specifically for a design and build project.
Yeah.
For a design and build project, when the liability cost they are keeping for one occurrence, let's say 10 million. So that first question is, the designer whom we are appointing might not have that much value of worth of liability with them, professional liability with them.
Right.
So at the end of the day, the contractor will take the responsibility of that liability.
See, here there are two things. One is so it has to flow down. The risk has to flow down primarily. For example, if the contractor is appointing the design entity, so that means the contractor is representing the client that they are doing the design and the design entity is under you. So when you are taking that risk as a contractor, that has to flow down to the consultant as well. Normally, the contract that you have with your consultant, so it should be indicated in that contract document as well. So that is the best way of the contractor to secure their own risk.
Ram, I think we'll have some more questions from some more people also.
Fine, yeah.
I think there is a question from what parameters are considered during bid evaluation and weightage of parameters?
Yeah, so weightage can differ, but in terms of parameters, first of all, one of the key criteria is their experience, the experience of the the listed the prospective bidder, for example, the interested party, for example, the capability to execute, whether they have financially, as I said, I have explained this in terms of if I have to go back. So these are some of the parameters that has to be considered also for pre-qualification. As I said, so their financial statements, what has been for example, last 3 years, if you want to evaluate their organization structure, how well they are organized, whether they have engineers, whether supervisors, experience. So whether they have, suitable equipment or the resources to execute, they have the valid licenses to execute that type of work. So these are some of the things that can also be considered during the pre-qualification stage.
There is one question from Shobhat, that is, what is the difference between FIDIC and Indian Contract Act?
Okay, so Indian Contract Act is the law of the land. FIDIC is more of a form of contract. So there can be various different forms of contract. So, but we always specify that if it is executed in India, then it has to be compliant with the Indian Contract Act provisions. Then it should follow the law of the land. So that's where the law of the land comes. FIDIC is more also in terms of different forms of contract for various what we can call as the delivery methods. For example, design build, or in terms of EPC, or in terms of measurable contracts and things like that. So FIDIC is primarily only a form of contract. Similarly, nowadays there's another form of contract which is gaining a lot of rapid popularity, which is called as new engineering contracts actually. So NEC is quite popular in the British companies, entities, Australia, UK, and these other regions. So they are following that. FIDIC has been formed by the European group of engineers. So they have come up with standard guidelines and clauses. So that is a FIDIC form of contract.
That's the last question, which will take.
Yeah.
Whether it is necessary to have a contract and stamp paper or not. And the second question is, if the contract is between parties of two different states, which state stamp will be applicable?
So it is the prerogative of the project owner whether they would want to have it on stamp paper. Normal practices in India, at least, many of the project owners follow the process of having an agreement on the stamp paper. So some of the multinational parties, probably, like if you look at any American companies or anything, they may just go with the written agreement. At the end of the day, contract is enforceable under the law. So so if two parties have agreed, then I don't know if the current requirement is there has to be a stamp paper. If that is the law, then there need to be a stamp paper on it. What is the second part of the question? Sorry. Sorry, as a second part of the question, I didn't get it. First part was whether we need stamp paper or not.
Yes, again, if there is a contract between parties of two different states, this stamp paper will be applicable.
That there should be in fact a clause which states that where probably where the work is being executed, the stamp paper of probably that state would have to be used. Again, it depends on who is the owner or who is the executing party here.
We should.
maybe we can clarify it offline. Probably we can do a little bit more research and I can get back to you on that.
Ram, are you hearing me?
Yeah.
Yeah, Ram, how to calculate the procurement productivity? May I know?
How to calculate the procurement productivity in terms of
Yeah.
okay. It will be with the same basis of what do you call how you calculate the resource productivity in other areas of work, probably. So in terms of maybe in terms of you can think of how many hours has gone into it, and you may have to evaluate what are the reasons behind it. So many hours of work for procurement, being put into it, and the reasons. Those could be the thing. As a formula, if you're asking me, then I'll have to revert back to you.
See, means some item is as a PMC role, some item is a free issue item, and some is a regular item. So means it's difficult to calculate. So how to make a slab or calculate the something, some norms or standards criteria.
I would suggest, I think, Jigar, we will you take this question offline with the Ram.
Yeah, we'll take this question offline. We will revert back.
You're almost, the end of the session, right? I think Ram, you can get touch with him, and you can clarify his question. I think we, with this, we will, close the session today. Right, I would like to thank Ram for taking out your time to make this wonderful presentation, and I also thank each and every one of you.
I would like to thank for the opportunity given by AACE India, as well as some of the knowledge areas provided by the AACE International. I think I should have had one slide for the certification. The certified cost engineering or certified cost professional certification covers the entire gamut of all these areas, including schedule, project management, earned value, as well as contract management. So I would suggest aspirational professionals to take that.
Provided.
Hi guys, are you able to hear me? Hello.
Yeah. Right.
Hey, this is Bhuvan. I have a question. This is the first time I'm taking a course from AACE. Really, thanks a lot. It was an amazing session, and in fact, me being a PMP myself, I found this was really educating. Thank you very much. I only have one question. What are this being the first such session I'm attending? What are the different topics that you guys provide training on, especially project management topics? May I know?
So I think we have already in this session 11 actually. We have only a few more sessions left. So some of that have been done already is introduction to EPC and planning, scheduling, estimation, costing, earned value, integrated program management. The coming up, some of the sessions involve risk management, resource management, and communications and things like that. So
design management.
Procurement.
Oh, thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
I think, Bhuvan, you can write to admin@aacindia.org, and you can also contact any of the numbers which are provided in your email. And we are happy to support all of you, right?
Definitely. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, where are you from?
I'm from Coimbatore. I work at Bosch as a project manager. I found this from LinkedIn, this thing from one of my contacts. And I was really surprised, and it is really, I just want to join. It was an amazing session. Though I am a PMP for many years now, more than 7 years, I really loved this session. But that made me ask, what have I missed so far? It seems I missed almost the entire series because I joined late. but as you said,
to log into our other webinar series. Maybe it might be, just to cover cost, we might charge very, very meager amount. But we will be, we can provide you. Okay.
Would be great, sir. I will write to the mail ID as you said. Thank you very much, sir.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks a lot.